AskReddit by Mankles. 3 people who have reached a 9 or 10 on the pain scale. What happened? Bacterial meningitis. My brain felt like a contained explosion that was trapped reverberating in my skull, but it wanted out and constantly let me know about it. Fuck the meningitis headache, felt like I was hit with a brick. Ruptured large intestine. Morphine helped a lot. I had a blockage in my small intestine. Don't think it ruptured per se. But the morphine didn't do anything after 12 hours, and that was the sign for them to do exploratory surgery. Also the second time I have had a blockage in my life. I have thankfully been exceedingly lucky in not gravely injuring myself. However, the most egregious amount of pain I've ever been in was getting stung by a stingray. Wasn't paying attention and moving quickly through shallow ocean and felt a slice. I thought I'd stepped on glass, but by the time I got out of the water the pain was so intense I couldn't even think. Felt like someone put my foot in a blender. I got treated quickly and thankfully did not go through the peak of it. For future reference, submerge affected area in the hottest water you can stand without burning yourself. Mine lasted 4 hours. Horrible pain. Right between my first and second toes. Ovarian cyst burst. I would have taken myself to the ER if I'd been able to get off the floor or reach my phone. Perforated colon with sepsis. Worst pain I ever felt. Same. Gotta love diverticulitis. Tried to give birth vaginally, and after hours of labor and hours of pushing, something felt horribly wrong. Then it felt like the worst pain imaginable. Ended up having an emergency C-section, but something went wrong with the drugs and I could feel the incision. My uterus had literally burst. After closing, the doctor was checking to make sure my uterus was solid and it had multiple other tears. I almost bled out. The doctor cried, telling my boyfriend what had happened. That's so rough. You know, going in that childbirth is going to hurt. You wouldn't know if something was going horribly wrong like that. Hope you're doing okay now. Trigeminal neuralgia. It feels like every bone and tooth in my face has been crushed and shattered. I've got a high pain tolerance from a lifetime of nerve damage from scoliosis, but TN pain had me truly wishing for the relief of death. Absolutely nothing gave me any relief whatsoever, and I was begging to just be sedated. I have TN as well. It's so difficult to explain to people who haven't experienced that pain what it feels like. It's also one of those invisible things, or what to call it, so more often than not, people assume I exaggerate how painful it is. It's a fucking nightmare, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Not knowing when it'll flare up or what will trigger the pain makes life unbearable at times. In my case, no meds or anything has helped. It's basically a you have to learn with this type of situation. Filling fell off my tooth and the live nerve was exposed. I couldn't even drink water. Worst pain I've ever experienced. Worse than appendix bursting, chipped bones, torn ligaments, sprains, the whole thing, lol. Hey, that exact same thing happened to me. I luckily was able to see my dentist after just 2 days, but it's been a fear ever since. Kidney stones. I've had around a dozen through the years. You think you can take the pain until it happens. My mom said she'd rather give birth. The contractions give you a break. Ovarian torsion that lasted 3 days. Also, CSF leak after a spinal tap. Earlier this week I learned that I had an ovarian torsion, years ago. I'm guessing it was the time I went to urgent care with extreme abdominal pain, and after an x-ray, wired x-ray, IDK, and a we don't see anything obviously wrong, they sent me home with Norco and told me to go to the ER if it got worse. The pain eventually resolved over a few days without getting worse. I found out that instead of resolving, my ovary died. Everything on that side of my abdomen was an absolute mess, and had been for years. I didn't actually have endometriosis causing near constant pain. Instead, I made multiple surgeons wonder how I was alive. I have a brain disease, So I've been a 9 or 10 a few times in my life. It's the worst pain ever, but it went away after a bit because I went essentially comatose every time after a little bit. Sorry, stupid question here. I thought I learned in class that the brain can't feel any pain. Please educate me, an idiot. Pancreatitis. This my answer to. Morphine didn't touch it. I was up for 2 days in the hospital before the morphine started working. Only time I've puked from pain. Fractured my hip and had to keep rucking 12 miles with 65 pounds on my back. I bawled my eyes out the whole time and another person was lifting the back of my ruck up to help take the weight off, but it is still the most painful thing I've ever experienced. Note: I wasn't allowed to leave the ruck or drop the weight. My DS said I wouldn't get credit for the ruck and would be recycled if I didn't carry my ruck. Note: my company was still using the large Model II rucks with both side pouches. That sounds insane. How did you fracture your hip? And do you feel like a stronger person now, psychologically, for having endured that? Hit by a car, leg got pinned in front of the wheel and it basically ate away my ankle. First sobering moment in my life when I picked up my leg and my ankle went at a 90-degree angle. I was 9 at the time and knew I had fucked up big time. 11 surgeries, 2 months in the hospital, 8 months bed rest later. I can say I still have my leg, most of it. Sorry to hear that, man. That sucks. Meningitis. I just passed out. Toothache closely followed by kidney stones. Tooth pain is hell on earth. Miscarried. Blood clot blocked my cervix. I was in agony. They gave me 10 milligrams of morphine until the pain subsided enough for me to go home. I don't know if that's what happened to me, but when I miscarried I was in such bad pain that I nearly passed out and couldn't walk. Went to the ER and morphine is the only thing that helped. To herniated discs. Yes, same, and that fucker slipped onto nerves. Was living with 10 pain for 4 months, not even opioids helped. I suffer from cluster headache. Ripped off a fingernail while farming, pulled the hand off the ground and it made a 90-degree angle from the base. Missight and mind came and went for like 10 minutes as if to pass out, and my whole hand was throbbing. Ripped off my big toenail like this. Well, not farming. So much more pain than you'd imagine. Chronic migraines and AMP. A bursted ovarian cyst. I had a bursted ovarian cyst. The only way to describe it is a bullet going through your ovaries and ricocheting at every step you take. Worst pain I've been in. My gallbladder was necrotic due to gallstones and I went into sepsis. Felt like a balloon kept expanding and getting bigger under the right side of my ribs to the point of popping. My wife said I was screaming for my mother, who had died 7 years earlier at the time. Went through it for 4 days before I decided to go to the hospital. Doctor said if I had waited 2 more days I probably would have died. 1. Had a baby. 2. Had gallstone pain attacks that ended up with me being septic and needing emergency surgery. 3. Pancreatitis needing hospitalization. All within 12 months. Also within that period I had mastitis 8 times. The 3rd time I was hospitalized because I was septic. It was a fucker of a year. VP shunt failure. I was out surfing and the longboard hit me on the back of the head after I bailed and broke the VP shunt that drained spinal fluid from my brain. A few days after that it felt like I just had an ordinary headache, but after a few days at home in bed as it got worse and worse I was finally taken to hospital as my brain was probably going to explode if they didn't fix it and the spinal fluid had kept building in my brain. The worst part is I now panic a little every time I get a mini headache because I'm never sure if I'm just dehydrated or about to have my head explode. I took a bullet to my left knee. I was shooting some targets with a buddy and one of the shots, I was closer than I should have been, bounced back into my knee. First I was confused, then the pain set in. Imagine a baseball bat. with a red hot nail in the end. Swung as hard as someone can into your knee. Worst pain I ever felt. I can't imagine being shot and not have it be a ricochet into the organs. It's the worst pain I ever felt. I now have no cartilage in my knee. It hurts every day, clicks and aches all the time.